all those folks. All right, we're gonna do the very best we can. I'm going to try to cut out a little early on Sunday school so we can start our process. Dr. Caldwell will be in here preaching to us today. He's a preacher after my own heart, preaches long. So we'll have a lot of information to absorb, I'm sure, from him. If the Lord willing, we'll just leave it up to the Lord. We've had him here before, heard him. He's definitely a treat. I'm glad the Lord gave him a way to be here this Sunday with us, so I'm excited about that. So with that being said, we're going to do our very best to try to get out of here in a timely fashion through our class. The back's going to be done at 20 till, so we're going to try to be done at 20 till also. Maybe I'm gearing trying to finish earlier, because it was just like I did with my kids this morning. Lily was at a friend's house, so I told her, I said, "You be ready at 8:30. I'm going to go pick you up." But in my mind, I thought I'd probably never get there till 9. So, so here, same idea. I'm going to have to have my mind ready to start a little earlier than 20 till, so I'll stop at 20 till. So, I've kind of went back this morning and brought out some old material that I don't think I've said much out here, but I have taught it in the back. I have used it in a couple other places. I actually used it at the college, believe it or not, and done some ministry at the college where I work at, and did it there first, and then used it with the young adults. And I don't think I've said a lot of it out here, but I'm going to talk about it just a little bit this morning. And it's about what we think about ourselves. And I know I've probably mentioned it maybe a couple times in some other lessons, but it deals with our thoughts, and it deals with God's thoughts. So Isaiah chapter 55, I'm going to read just a couple of verses here, and then we'll go to the book of Ephesians. Isaiah 55, I believe this is out of the NIV. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. I think that right there is a very big statement by God. Our thoughts are totally different than God's thoughts. And if we can ever grab a hold of that, then maybe we won't battle as bad with fighting discouragement and depression and things of that nature. But if we can ever grab a hold of that His thoughts are different than our thoughts. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. Verse 9 says, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. Now that's another big statement. Just as the heavens higher than the earth, you might say man's space, God's space, right? God's space is much higher than man's space. If you want to look at it in a geographical sense, we have the earth that we're sitting on, the floor, the ground, the land, and then we look up to the sky and it's higher than where we're at. So we have those points of reference if we want to use some kind of mathematical terminology. But I like to look at it more in probably what the intention is that there's man's space and then there's God's space. And that God's space is much higher than man's space. So as the heavens are higher than the earth, the Lord declares that my ways, He says my ways, the Lord's ways are higher than your ways. Now that's a big statement because we got a lot of faith and a lot of confidence sometimes in our ways. Well, I'm going to do it my way because my ways worked several times before. But sometimes my way just don't always work. So we need to remember that God's ways are much higher than our ways. And then He declares again, a second time, that my thoughts than your thoughts. So he in verse 8 and verse 9, he makes the same declaration. He reemphasizes himself that his thoughts are greater and higher than our thoughts. So it brings me to this conclusion that we probably value what we think way too much. One of the things that probably in Isaiah that's trying to get a point that the way that you're thinking is not the way that I'm thinking, says the Lord. The things that you think are the way that this is going to play out may possibly be not the way things are going to play out because my thoughts are just so much bigger than your thoughts. And my ways are just so much bigger than your ways. And if we can really grab a hold of that, we can understand that a lot of times the things that we're thinking is the problem. Now, we've got really two things that fight against us. One is the things that we're doing physically are killing us, whether it's committing sin, whether it's our habits, whether it's our our failures, those physical things. But if we take a step back, why do I do these things? Why do I commit these actions? Why do I go? Well, it starts before you actually physically do something. It starts between those two ears, doesn't it? I have to think something usually before I do something. Now, obviously we have reflexes, and you call them knee-jerk reactions. But a lot of times, even knee-jerk reactions are still a pattern of your thinking. In other words, we will go through certain scenarios in our mind that, if somebody does this to me, well, this is what I'll do. And a lot of times, even though those things are not happening to us, we've already went through these scenarios in our mind, whether it's through our entertainment choices, whether we're watching movies or TV shows, and we have this precognition of this, how we would react to certain things if certain things happen to us. So again, I think I have proven here in just that small area that it really begins the way you're thinking before these actions ever happen. So a lot of times it seems like through Isaiah chapter 55 that we're valuing our thoughts maybe a little too much. What a lot of times we're thinking, what we're feeling is exactly what's killing us. We got to stop believing everything that we think and feel and start valuing what God thinks, what God feels. What God says in His Word is what we are, not what we think we are. Ephesians 1 says this. Ephesians 1 says, Paul writes, he says in verse 16, I have not stopped thanking God for you. Now listen to what he says. In other words, he tells the Ephesians, I thank God for you, Ephesians. You're pretty good, Ephesians. The church of Ephesians, you're pretty good. All right? So he opens up and says, you know what? You're really good. You're really good people. I always hear folks use that as an excuse. Well, I'm a pretty good person. The only time that you ever say you're a pretty good person is because when you messed up. I mean, you just don't say, I'm a pretty good person. Well, what'd you do? Because that's our mechanism of trying to get through our mess-ups is, well, I'm not that bad of a person, right? Or we're trying to do the weight in the balances, maybe more good outweighs this little bad, and we can balance out this little bit of bad we're doing with a whole lot of good. And then what we have done is we're trying to transform a grace system into a work system, and we're trying to let our works outdo our failures. And I understand that because it's kind of our natural thing to do is to try to, if we hurt somebody's feelings, we're just going to be overly we're going to be overly trying to get their forgiveness. We may be trying to take them out to eat. We may be trying to buy them a gift, right? I know if I hurt my wife's feelings, I'm trying to get forgiveness, and I may overly try to get that forgiveness with flowers, you might say. Now, my wife doesn't like flowers too well, but some women do like flowers, so may go out and buy flowers. Now, I figured this out a long time ago, but a lot of men don't think like I do and don't ponder these things because I'm just all about strategies and plans and algorithms and mathematics, but most men are not like that apparently. And it's kind of traditionalism if you mess up to go buy them flowers, and I just saw that it's not very well received because they kind of think, well, you never buy me flowers when you didn't mess up or when you didn't make me mad, so you're just trying to get into my good graces. It's not going to work. So things like that, I might take them out to dinner, may go on a little shopping spree to tea. We're trying to cover up probably what we hurt spiritually, how we hurt them emotionally with physical items, and physical items will never cover up what you've done to them emotionally. So a lot of men haven't figured that out. He says, you're pretty good. Paul says, you're pretty good. I have not stopped thanking God for you. He says, I pray for you constantly. That's pretty big. Paul's saying, I'm praying, because we're going to have to apply this to our life too. And I think Paul's saying, listen, I'm praying for you, but you need to pray for yourself too. When somebody says that, I've been praying for you, we also need to remember that if somebody's been praying for us, that also means we need to be praying also. I think a lot of times when something happens to us and we're trying to say, pray for me, I think sometimes we put such an emphasis on the power of other people that we forget that, the relationship that we have with God is what's most important. And that we need to be praying with everybody praying with us. It's not to take any kind of lesson that you're praying for me. I need you praying for me, but I need your encouragement that I pray too, that I pray. I guess, so I can communicate this to you, if I ever ask any of you to pray for me, you feel free to encourage me to pray for myself too. Does that make sense? Because I think that might be one of the biggest keys in my thinking, my mentality, the way that I'm viewing what I'm going through, is that, I'm not really, I need to plug into my personal relationship. Now, here's what's tough, and this is, everybody's different, right? You can't treat everybody the same. Not everybody's got the same relationship with God. So when people are asking you to pray for them, probably 9 times out of 10, it's because they don't have enough strength to pray for themselves. So not only do we need to be strong for those that are weak, because that's what the Scripture tells us, but we also need, along the lines, encourage them to be what God tells them that they are. Now, you got to be real careful and real sensitive, right? Because not everybody can receive, because, again, not everybody's at the same point in their relationship. You can talk a little rough to me, and I'll receive it, but because maybe I'm in a different spot. And also, you've got the liberty because I've communicated that to you, right? If I've opened the door, you walk through it. If somebody else hadn't opened the door, you got to be real careful, right? Don't be kicking down people's doors, because you'll hurt them more than you'll help them. But still, we've got to have the right mind, right? If we're in a teaching class today, we've got to have the right mind that I'm going to pray for you, and that's going to help you. But you know what? It's going to help you if we both pray together. So he says, I pray constantly for you. Now here's where we're trying to get to. Asking God, the glorious Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, to give you spiritual wisdom. He says, I pray for you that you would ask God, or that God would give you spiritual wisdom and insight so that you might grow in the knowledge of God. Verse 18 says, I pray that your hearts will be flooded with light so that you can understand the confident hope He has given to those He called, His holy people who are His rich and glorious inheritance. Now, this is probably our main scripture today that we're really wanting to talk to. I opened up because we had to set the framework that our thoughts are probably a lot of the problem. But we look here that Paul says, first of all, there's something that God has to give. See, this is what gets me. I can try to work really, really hard to get knowledge from God, because I don't know, I hesitate to say what I was fixing to say because I don't think I'm at that place just yet. But I'm working really hard where I'm at in my life and in ministry to get more knowledge of God. I don't know that I'm at the place where I've worked the hardest to get the knowledge of God. Because when I first started, man, I didn't know anything. 20-something years ago, I didn't know anything. The only stuff I knew about the Bible was the stuff I learned in Bible school and Sunday school. And, and that didn't have a big retention, but I knew some stories, right? So I worked really, 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 really hard for those first several years in the ministry. But now I find myself working really, really hard again, trying to receive and trying to figure out about this God that we're serving. But what I've noticed here is no matter how hard I work to try to know my God, God still has to give it to me. I can't really just earn it. I really can't just grab a hold of it. I really can't steal it. I can't just go snatch it. I can't, because what happens is we have a world full of information. I can YouTube anything. I can so who's right and who's wrong is what comes up. Who's right and who's wrong? Because everybody can prove something in some light to be true, but not everybody can disprove everything. It's just kind of what lens you're looking through. So how do I still, when all this diverse knowledge is setting out there about God and who God is and theology and all these things, how the Bible works all together, who am I to believe? So there comes a point that I have to realize that information's out there, but I still need God to gift me a knowledge of Him. That God still has to show me who He is. So when I start looking at that, I start saying, okay, all this is the part where much study, it'll make you weary sometimes, where you just study and study and study, and it wears you down to the point where you're like, gosh, what is this right or this right? And that you have to start looking at just your everyday life and start saying, well, God, how did you reveal yourself to me today? What did you do today that just was you, God? Because we live life every day and we miss God time after time and time. I mean, He's doing stuff every day in our life and we're just overlooking it and just taking it for granted. And He's just doing things constantly for us to make us be blessed and comfortable and things. And we're just overlooking them because we think kind of it's by our strength. And it's not. It's by Him. So Paul says, I pray for you constantly, asking God. So we see that God would give you spiritual wisdom. So God gives, and when God gives this, something has to happen in your heart because it's spiritual wisdom. So something has to turn in your heart so that we can be enlightened. And what are we enlightened? What was the spiritual wisdom for? It was to enlighten us to this hope that we're called to. So we see that our thoughts fight against us and we need God's thoughts. And Paul, even praying to a good bunch of people, he said, I thank God for you. You're a good bunch. But I'm still praying that God would give you spiritual wisdom, that you would go to another place where you would receive more knowledge and more wisdom. So that also tells us that there's no stopping point for us. None of us have arrived. We've not made it to the end. We've not made it to the point where we can neglect studying or neglect our relationship with God or neglect praying or neglect knowing more about God. We don't know God today like we need to know Him tomorrow. Does that make sense? We need to know Him better tomorrow than we know Him today. And then weeks from now, we need a deeper walk with Him than we did today. So God gives us something. And this something that He gives us, this spiritual wisdom, is to enlighten us to this hope. He says, I pray that your hearts would be flooded with light, that you can understand. See, we have a hard time understanding this confident hope. I love the word confident. I love the word when the Bible uses confident, because when you're confident, you're not depressed. When you're confident, you're not discouraged. When you're confident, you have purpose and direction. So confidence is something that the Bible tells us, don't you throw it aside. Don't you take it as something that's neglect, but then we also have to be humble. See, the Bible constantly is trying to keep us in balance, isn't it? Be confident, but don't think you're more than you are, right? Be confident, because if you're confident, then you're not discouraged, but don't think you're bigger than God, right? Don't think you can do it on your own, but be confident in what? In the hope. In the hope He has given to those He called. See, we've already talked a lot in this class about being called, being picked, being chosen. See, that's what you are. You think you called Him. You didn't call Him. Oh, Jesus comes out. You didn't call Him. You thought you did, but you didn't. See, salvation seemed like it was all on me, but salvation was nothing on me. It was all on Him. He picked me. I want to tell you, God can blow your doors off to the point where it's hard to deny Him. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you experience that kind of love and that kind of mercy, it's hard to deny that. It's hard to deny that. And I got these theological ideas that I won't communicate to you today, but He's called you. He's picked you. He's chose you. You didn't choose Him, the Bible says. He chose you. You thought you picked His team. He picked you for His team. Right? See, if I pick you to be on my whatever team, my ministry team, it's because I've got a reason to pick you. I know that there's something that you bring to the table. There's purpose for you. So when God chose you, He chose you because He had a divine purpose for you. But see, we're thinking all the wrong things a lot of times. In all honesty, when it comes to hoping, we're just terrible hopers. We're terrible at hoping. We didn't used to be terrible at hoping. We used to be really good at hoping. When we were little, we was really good hopers. Boy, it sounds like something my grandma would say, hopers. We was really good at it when we was little. But because through life we got so many letdowns, we've had so many letdowns that we've began just to expect the worst. Our thought patterns change because we just expect the worst. So we go into situations we think the worst is going to happen, so we won't be hurt or we won't be let down. All right, I don't have just a lot of confidence in McDonald's. I really don't. But there's a few things at McDonald's that I can get that's usually every time pretty good. An ice cream cone seems to be pretty good every time I go to McDonald's. You know, they put a big emphasis on their coffee shop. Their regular coffee, pretty much, the majority of the time, is pretty good. So when I go to McDonald's, a lot of times I'll stop to a McDonald's to get a cup of coffee because I'm afraid at the gas station the coffee's not fresh and it's been sitting there all day because they're 24-hour jokers, and of course some McDonald's are 24 hours. But, you know, I don't have a lot of confidence in the burgers at McDonald's. I don't have a lot of hope in that. I mean, I'm going expecting that I'm getting the worst. Well, last night I stopped by McDonald's to get a cup of coffee, and I was thinking this is going to be a good cup because McDonald's does coffee. Well, you know what? It was a sorry cup of coffee. It was cold when they get. I mean, it was just. I mean, not really cold. It was lukewarm. I mean, I don't know. I mean, when it's I've had it where they've got warnings on their cups now because you know they got sued about it being so hot. When you get a lukewarm cup of coffee at McDonald's, something's went wrong. And I told Melissa that, you know, now I can't even get a cup of coffee at McDonald's. So now I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna expect the worst, just like I do if I ordered a Big Mac or something. Because I'm a terrible hoper. Because I was let down yesterday. I couldn't even drink. I mean, I drank about 2 or 3 sips of that cup of coffee, and it was just a waste. I was just miserable. Whole ride back home, I was like, gosh, this is what was going to get me back happy. You know, I was going to be satisfied. Well, then I just had to find something else to make me happy, you know, along the ride. You ride in a vehicle with 4 women every day, you'll find some things to concentrate on. You know, you'll find some things that'll get you through the car ride. I know some of you trying to judge me right now, but you just need to come sit in my driver's seat with them 4 women. I ain't got a prayer. If I ain't one of them, it's another one. And then I'm just praying it ain't all 3 girls at the same time. But we're terrible hopers. We're terrible. We didn't used to be. When we was kids, we were excited about everything. But now, not so much. I mean, we really need a miracle to have hope sometimes. You know, there's a difference, ain't there, between Monday and Friday. You know why there's a difference between Monday and Friday? Because we're terrible hopers. Sometime this afternoon or tonight or after church, you're going to start thinking, oh, Monday's fixed to be here. And I've made a statement out here, no telling how many times now, I'm the world's worst to say, somebody asks me how I'm doing on a Monday, and I'm saying, I'm pretty good for a Monday. Why? Because why does Monday got to be a bad day? It doesn't have to be a bad day. The only reason it is what it is because we're terrible hopers. I found when I'm out of work, Monday's still not that good of a day. Even when I'm not going to work, it's still a Monday. Because we've got this mechanism built into us with our thought pattern that Monday's got to be some kind of unusually terrible day because we kind of say it's the first day of the work week. We say there's a difference between Monday and Friday, but we should have excitement about the hope that we have in. See, Monday can be a good day if God's gave us spiritual wisdom and knowledge about Him, that we're confident in our hope in Jesus Christ. We can go into a Monday with a whole different atmosphere that we are given another day to do whatever God needs us to do to glorify Him, to be pleasing to Him, right? Because, I mean, we all want to be pleasing to Daddy, Mama, right? We want to find favor, don't we? I do. I want to find favor. He died on the cross for me and you. He spent a lot for me and you. And then not only that, we've talked about today, he picked us. I don't want to let him down. What do you think the Apostle Paul said? He did not bestow this grace upon me in vain. He did not show me mercy in vain for me just to be something else than what he wants me to be. He says, but I'm going to be what he's called me to be, what he's picked me to be. And I'm not going to let my thoughts interfere with what God's thoughts are about me. See, that's where we got to get. I've got to get where I tell myself to shut up. I'm having to cut it a little short because that wasn't till a little bit later. 1 Corinthians, let's see if we can go a little bit up. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 9 says, that is what the Scriptures mean when they say, no eye is seen, no ear is heard, and no mind has imagined what God prepared for those who loved Him. Verse 10, but it was to us that God revealed these things by His Spirit. For the Spirit searches out everything and shows us God's deep secrets. See, God's got something for me and you. He's got something for us. And there is a way that a miracle can take place and enlighten us to understand the hope that which we've been called to. Ephesians again, 18 here says, I pray that your hearts would be flooded with this light so that you can understand the confident hope He has given to those He called, His holy people who are His rich and glorious inheritance. Now, this is kind of our getting to our concluding. Notice that he's talking about us throughout this Ephesians till the very end. He says, I pray that your heart will be enlightened, it'll be flooded with this light, that you'll have this knowledge of God, and that you'll understand that you should have this confident hope that He's given to those He's called. But then he talks about His holy people who are His rich inheritance. See, I thought he was talking about me for a little while, but he's not talking about me now. He's talking about God. We are God's rich inheritance. Do you understand that? If you have anybody in your life that has something and they're going to pass it down to you, you understand that one day that is going to be yours, right? The idea behind that is that my children take care of what I have because one day it'll be theirs, right? They will have an inheritance. Now, I won't call the inheritance that I leave them a rich inheritance by any means, but it will be an inheritance. I am not unconscious of thinking about leaving my children something. It may not be a lot, but it be something. So they would have something that would be passed down from me to them for them to do whatever they want to with. So here we say that it says God's people, His holy people, who is His rich inheritance. First of all, He calls you His rich inheritance. He's saying you're valuable, right? See, in the eyes of my kids right now, I probably got a lot because they got nothing, right? The only things they got is what I give them. They got nothing. But they looked at, oh, you got a lot. You got this car, you got this. They don't know about banks, and they don't know about loans and mortgages, and they don't know how much I owe on things or anything like that. But they think I'm rich, right? So they look at me and say, oh, gosh, Dad, you got a lot of stuff to give us. We're going to get all those groceries in that refrigerator. They think about stuff, oh, gosh, that's a lot. Jerry said, just write a check, Dad. But we can get it, just write a check. They don't understand on the back end, the money's got to be in the account, right? Oh, swipe that card, Dad. I saw you swipe it 100 times, and we get stuff every time you swipe it. They don't get the other end of the deal, so they think it's rich. Now listen to what God said, what Paul says. You are His rich inheritance. You are something so special, so great, that Paul says God considers you His rich inheritance. A valuable inheritance to Him. You're special, and He will inherit you. So it's not about your inheritance, it's about His inheritance. God looks at you and He says, there's my inheritance. There's my bride. There is what I'm longing for. There is my hope in the future. That is what I'm going to receive. I'm going to receive you. I'm going to receive you. God says, I'm getting you. I don't care about the cattle on the thousand hill. I done got all that. Don't care about the mountains. Don't care about the hill. Don't really care that much about it. But you is what I care about. You are my inheritance. That's how special you are. See, there are days when I do not feel treasured by God. Anybody had a day like that where you don't feel like you're a treasured commodity by God? You feel worthless. You don't even know why God even talks to you, why He even took time to try to save you, why he got you to an altar of repentance. You don't even know. You just feel like you're garbage and not treasured by God. Days when I don't think I'm treasured by God, those are the days when I need to tell myself to shut up. That my thoughts are not God's thoughts. And His thoughts and His ways are much higher than my ways. So, Tom, you just need to shut up. I just need to sit and say, who cares what Thomas Frost thinks? God's thoughts are higher than my thoughts. See, nobody thought about telling herself to shut up. Anybody else told herself to shut up? This is a great revelation. You want to be happy? Tell yourself to shut up. Melissa says, if you won't tell yourself to shut up, I'll tell you to shut up. Sometimes you can incorporate help to tell yourself to shut up. But really, it becomes intrinsic, right? If you can do it on your own, it means something. You know, my wife tells me to be quiet. Sometimes it don't sit too well with me. But if I can make that judgment, if I can say, listen, Tom, God's thoughts are different than your thoughts. You got to change your way of thinking. You got to you can't fix this thing, but you can shut that. You got to bring that thought into captivity. It's warring against your flesh. Again, what did he say? Just to prove this to you, he said, Isaiah 55, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Verse 19 of Ephesians chapter 1 says, I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in Him. That you'll understand this unbelievable power, because you underestimate constantly His unbelievable power. When I get depressed, I tell depression to go, because I do not underestimate His power. God, I need your power to get rid of this. I need your power. God, if I need a chemical balancer, send me to the right person, right? Because I know your power is great. See, somebody says, well, you're talking about not ever taking medicine. I'm not talking about not taking medicine. I'm talking about God leading you to the right person. I believe God created all these things. I believe God put some knowledge into somebody that could help us out when my mechanics are all messed up. I mean, I don't know why things happen. I don't know why my run yesterday wasn't a good run. I've had 25 good runs in a row. What made yesterday a bad run? Really? It made me mad. I've had 25 good ones in a row. Why was yesterday a terrible run? I look back. I was eating bad. Was I doing? I try to analyze. I try to find the algorithm. I'm trying to do. I'm going through all of those. Something's got something. I don't have all the answers, but God does. God's got the knowledge and the wisdom and understanding. His incredible greatness. Greatness that cannot be measured is what that means when it's incredible greatness. That's why when we say incredible, we can't measure it. It's so unbelievable we can't measure His greatness. But you know what? We're all guilty of just being happy, of just getting through. Oh, I hear that all the time. I just want to get through. I don't want to just get through. Just getting through is not a happy place. I'll just be honest with you. Just take me on out. I want to be more than just getting through. Listen, I want to get through, but along the way, I want to have some fun too. You got to find somebody. I thought about Sister Barbara here this morning. You know what? It's not been a pleasurable thing having to go through treatments. It's just not. Emory, it's not been a pleasurable thing having the foot hurt. But you know what? There's been points in the process where there's been opportunities that you never had before. And there's been opportunities where you looked the doctor in the eyeballs probably and said, you know what, you said that, but I know an incredible, powerful God that can do what no medicine can do. Even though I believe that medicine, he gave you the knowledge and wisdom so you can make some of that, I believe He's bigger than all that. And you know what? That's the thing. We may be getting through, but we don't have some fun along the way. And we got to keep that in our thought pattern. See, I'm ministering and teaching to you things that I know that I'm going to have to face full-fledged one day. One day I'm going to go through some things that I have never went through before. And I'm going to have to battle some things that I've never battled unless some car just runs me over while I'm running and I just go on out. And that could happen. But I think every time I step behind a pulpit or I step behind a podium and I teach the Word of God to you, that I've got to remember these things when I go through them. Because I'm going to need this. It's not easy to do this. It's not easy to put it in effect. But by George, I may have an opportunity to show up and show out in the Lord when I'm going through the most terrible situation ever. I hope I can. I don't know that I can, but I hope I can. And I'm going to try to remember things that you've been taught, and I hope you may reciprocate the things that you've heard today back to me. We just want to get through life. We just want to survive. This is all my life is going to amount to. This is what we tell ourselves. This is what others tell us. But today, who cares what other people think? Who cares what we think? It's not about what we think. It's not about what somebody else thinks. It's about what God thinks. There is an immeasurable amount of greatness of power towards you where you can pray to ask for His spirit of revelation. I don't care if everyone else rejects me. He looks at me as His inheritance. And I got power from Him. Power, verse 20 would tell us in Ephesians, power like He had to raise Him from the dead. We've got to quit listening to ourselves. We've got to listen to what God says. Ephesians 1, this is the same mighty power in verse 20 that raised Christ from the dead and seated Him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. You can walk around in that confidence. In that confidence. All right, guys, we're done today. It's 10:40. Right on time. God bless fellowship with one another. We're going to change services.